Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. In this video, we're going to show you the top 10 things you need to know when you travel to Switzerland. Hey guys, welcome back to the Traveling Swiss. Thank you so much to the first 1,000 people that subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world. If you are not already subscribed, please consider subscribing down below for more tips and tricks on travel and life in Switzerland. So with that, let's get into my top 10 things that you need to know before you come to Switzerland. Okay, tip number 1 is train etiquette. So there's gonna be a few tips wrapped up in this one, but if you're going to Switzerland, chances are you'll be taking the Swiss trains to get around, and good news is the train system is incredible, but there are a few differences and things that you should follow if you wanna just, not get those looks from Swiss citizens. So the first one is to make sure that you are quieter on the train than you're used to. So me being American, and likely a lot of Americans, I think we're just used to talking louder. Our standard kind of talking voice is louder and almost seems like we're shouting to Swiss people. So my husband is Swiss, and when we're on a train, I often find that he shushes me a lot, and I feel like I'm talking totally normally and like a normal volume, and he says screaming. So I would say the first thing to consider is to be a little bit quieter on the Swiss trains. You'll see that everyone kind of just has their headphones in, they're reading, people aren't really talking even very much, so just be a little bit quieter than you used to. The next thing to consider on Swiss public transportation is when you're getting in and out, you'll see that everybody stands to the side and waits for people to get off the train before anybody gets in. If you're from a big city like New York, you know that the doors open and people kind of just pack right in, but in Switzerland, everyone is very respectful. The doors open, everybody stands to the side, gives people a chance to get off, kind of takes a beat and make sure everybody's off the train before they themselves go into the train. So just make sure that you respect that, because if you get on before everybody's off, people will, look at you and they may say something. And the last thing on the trains is don't put your feet up on the seat. This isn't necessarily specific for Switzerland, but I've noticed that nobody puts their feet up on the seat. Don't take up 2 seats. Don't put your feet up. It's kind of gross. You shouldn't do it anywhere, but you definitely shouldn't do it in Switzerland. People are really, really respectful. The trains are really, really clean. They keep it that way. So just, you're in a new country, respect it. Don't put your feet up on the seat. Okay, next one that you may not know, and I actually did not know before I went to Switzerland, and it was kind of a headache once I got here, are the plugs in the outlets are not the same. So Switzerland is not in the EU, and they have a lot of their own kind of rules and nuances. So if you're on like a multi-country trip and you're going from Germany to Italy to France, and you're gonna go into Switzerland and you think that all of your same adapters will work, they will not. Switzerland has different ones. So this is like a standard European adapter here. So you see it has the 2 prongs and like a pretty rounded edge. This is the European one. The Swiss one is similar but different. So the Swiss one has the 3 prongs, and it's a little bit skinnier. So the Swiss one will actually fit into other European outlets usually, but European plugs will not fit into the Swiss outlet. So I'll put information on the screen about the exact one you're looking for. I think it's easier if you're coming to just like get it on Amazon before you get here, because if you get it when you're here, you get it in one of those tourist shops, it's always more expensive, but that's a little bit of a headache if you're not prepped for it. So it's just something to note. If you come to Switzerland, they do not use the same outlets that are used in the rest of continental Europe. Okay, so the next tip is about public restrooms. So the great news is Switzerland is really, really clean and has very nice public restrooms that I haven't had a problem going into. But with that, you usually have to pay for the public restrooms. So if you're in like a main city area or in a train station and you see the restroom, it will likely not be free, and you will need to pay for it with change. So if you have bills, that won't be accepted. So just make sure you have some change with you, because you will need that if you're going to the restroom. And what I have found in Switzerland, and actually quite a bit of Europe versus the United States, is people are a little bit less open to you just like walking in a restaurant or something and letting you use their bathroom. You can like try it in a McDonald's, but if you just walk into a bar or a restaurant and say like, hey, can I use your restroom? They usually say no. So just make sure you have coins for those public restrooms so you don't have to, have an emergency. Okay, so the next tip, relates a little bit to that last one, not exactly, but that is Switzerland is a very, very high cost of living country, and with that, it is very expensive to travel here. So good news is I have a video that I will link here about doing Switzerland on a budget, and there are certainly ways to save, but I do think that it's important to know when you're planning a trip to Switzerland it really is as expensive as people say it is. There are ways to do it inexpensively, and you can plan that, but Switzerland as a whole is really, really expensive. So I know that I grew up in New York City, and that's where I was living before moving to Switzerland, and I was still really kind of shocked with how expensive things can be. So some kind of average items is if you go get a coffee, it's gonna run you like 5 or 6 francs, and even something like a McDonald's Big Mac meal will be like 15 francs. And the reason I tell you that is because it's, something that's all over the world and usually the cheapest food you can get. So with that, just know that you're gonna be spending a little bit more money in Switzerland than you maybe expect. So just do some planning. You can budget for that ahead of time. The last kind of thing I'll note there is, like the travel adapters, Switzerland, not in the EU, and they like to do things differently. I think you'll notice it's a theme that the Swiss are very proud of their own culture and tend to be different than the rest of Europe. They are not on the euro. So if you were coming from France or Germany or Italy or any of the bordering countries or anywhere else within Europe into Switzerland, you cannot use your euros here. There may be some places in like Zurich or Geneva that are geared towards tourism and very touristy that will accept euros, but you will not get a good exchange rate. The exchange rate will likely be 1-to-1, so you'll be losing money on that. So my recommendation is either use your ATM card and pull out some francs once you get here, or take them out within your home country. Also, cards are really widely accepted here, so you can use a card if you have like a travel card that doesn't have an international exchange fee. But know that if you're taking out euros for your whole trip, you can't use them in Switzerland, and if you can, I really don't recommend it. You won't get the best rate. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is tipping. So this is mostly geared towards anybody watching from North America or the US like myself, because Switzerland will be similar to the rest of Europe, but the tipping in Switzerland is not anywhere near the same as it is in the US. So to me, I was always a little bit shocked at like how little of a tip my husband would leave when we would be in restaurants, but he reminds me that people in Switzerland are really paid a fair living wage. In some parts of Switzerland, the minimum wage can be up to like 25 francs an hour, and waiters and waitresses are paid that, so they are compensated fairly, so they are not relying on your tips to survive. So this kind of goes with everything. This goes with hair salons, taxis, things like that. I think the standard tipping practice is at maximum 10%, but what I see most people do is just like round up. So if you go out to a restaurant and your bill is like 43, 44 francs, you can round up and give them 50 francs, but you don't need to tip like 20, 30%, sometimes even like you do in the US. So just know when you're in Switzerland, they are paid fairly, they are compensated, and they have a living wage, and they're not reliant on your tips to survive. So because of that, the tipping is much, much less than you'll be expected in the US. So the sixth tip here is a little bit of a do not do, and that is do not jaywalk or cross the light when it's red. I have to say that sometimes I do this myself, but you will not see any Swiss people doing this. They respect the rules, and I think this is similar in Germany as well, which I've also lived in. But you will not see people crossing the light when it's red, and you will not see people jaywalking, even if there is not a card to be found and you're somewhere in the middle of the countryside. Swiss people will respect the rules. So if you don't want somebody to say something to you and you just kind of want to blend in to this country you're visiting, I do recommend waiting at the lights and not jaywalking. Okay, so the seventh tip might only be useful for some of you. So if you are planning on visiting a Swiss person in their home, but it's also useful if you're staying in an Airbnb, and that is to absolutely take your shoes off when you go into someone's house. So if you're staying in an Airbnb, make sure you do that, because the Swiss are very, very strict. I've noticed kind of almost across the board about taking your shoes off in someone's home. So me coming from New York, I think we're really casual about this. So my husband would almost point out that he would feel weird if he took his shoes off and walked into someone's apartment if he's wearing like socks. Everyone else has their shoes on. Unless it's like winter or something, everybody keeps their shoes on, at least from my experience in the US. You could tell me if you've had a different one, but in Switzerland, I will say that people are really strict about taking your shoes off. And you'll actually even see in some people's houses, and I think it's quite cute, they'll have like slippers at the front door. I could put like a photo of what they look like here. I think the French word in Switzerland for them is pantoufle. Yeah, so take your shoes off, especially if you're in an Airbnb, you want to be respectful of someone's home, or if you happen to know Swiss people and you're visiting them, make sure to take your shoes off, because otherwise they will likely just tell you. And then, you know, in some people's home, the slippers at the door for you to wear as a guest is a little bit of a signal to take your shoes off when you go into their house. Okay, so this next one is to everybody that is not necessarily a planner. You need to be in Switzerland, and that is because the opening hours are much, much different than you will likely be used to based on where you're coming from. So in Switzerland, everything will be closed on Sunday. So if Sunday is a day that you're planning on doing your shopping for kind of tourist souvenirs, or you're gonna go hiking and you plan on stopping in a grocery store to get some lunch or anything like that, that will be closed on Sunday. You can go to a main train station and they may have a grocery store open depending on where you are, but just be aware of the opening times in advance. So Swiss grocery stores in most places tend to only be open Monday to Saturday, and they usually close around 7 p.m. Some close around 8 p.m., but just make sure you're cognizant of those hours because they are much, much different than what I'm used to in the United States. And then imagine in some places they're different as well. You still live in Berlin. In Berlin, you had kind of longer hours as well. So the Swiss are quite conservative with the hours because they do respect work-life balance, which is great, but make sure that you plan ahead of time. Also, what I will say is they tend to eat dinner a little bit earlier. So kitchens and restaurants might close at 9 p.m. So if you're a late eater, just make sure that, you know, when you're going somewhere, you have a reservation and you know when their kitchen closes. You can't really walk in at like 8:50 and the restaurant closes at 9 and expect them to serve you like you might in some other places. They won't. So I would just say across the board, be cognizant of those store hours and plan accordingly. I would hate that, you know, somebody has this trip booked and the only day that they have to kind of go shopping and buy souvenirs and things that they want to take home is a Sunday, and then unfortunately everything in Switzerland will be closed. So just make sure to be aware of that. Sundays are a great day to go hiking, but they are not a great day to go shopping. Okay, so if you're planning a trip to Switzerland, you likely have noticed that the Swiss speak 4 national languages. So the reason that this is a tip is I just want you to be prepared based on where you're going. So if you're in Western Switzerland, they will speak French. Most of Switzerland, about 2/3, speak German, and this is where the tip really comes in. So the German that they speak in Switzerland is not the German that, you know, if you took German in high school or in college and you feel really ready to communicate, that is not the German that is spoken here. That German is called Hochdeutsch or High German. What is spoken here is Schweizerdeutsch, which is a Swiss specific dialect. So where this gets tricky is even if you're very proficient in German, you will not understand Swiss German. So that can be a little frustrating if you were prepped to kind of come to Switzerland, practice your best German. That will not be the German that is spoken. So good news is you have a few options here. Everyone that speaks Swiss German, by and large, can also communicate in Hochdeutsch. So they will, you know, I think immediately recognize if you are not speaking Swiss German and switch to High German for you. So that's one option, but I will say a lot of people can also communicate in English. It's always nice to have some phrases in the local language, but with Swiss German, that's really tough because even canton to canton, they have very different kind of dialects, but there's just different nuances in each of the different cantons. So that's something to be aware of, that if you're ready to speak German, the German that is spoken here is not a German you're gonna understand. So we'll put a map here of the different regions and different languages so you know where in Switzerland they are speaking what language, because it's always appreciated to at least say hello, goodbye, maybe know how to ask for the check in the language of where you're visiting, but you might need to lean on English a little bit more, especially in the Swiss German part if you are not comfortable communicating in Swiss German. Okay, and tip number 10 is to make sure to bring a water bottle. I think I've said this in a few videos now, so you guys might think I'm crazy with the water fountains, but there is fresh, amazing drinking water all over Switzerland, even in villages in the mountain, even in remote parts of Switzerland. I'll put some kind of B-roll of what these water fountains look like, but you do not need to go buy plastic water bottles. It is a waste of money. There's water everywhere. Just bring a water bottle, fill it up, and make sure that you're not kind of wasting plastic. It really is such a waste when I see people going to the store and buying plastic water bottles and bringing them into their hotel. You don't need it. There's water all over Switzerland and it's amazing, clean, fresh drinking water. Probably some of the best I've ever had. So make sure to take advantage of that. Just like a little bonus tip. Okay guys, so that was my 10 things that you need to know before you travel to Switzerland. Let me know if you like this video and if you want to see more like it. I'm really hoping that I can keep giving you guys the information you need to plan trips to Switzerland to visit. Hopefully this year tourism is going to be possible again, but if it's not, we can still keep dreaming, keep being excited about travel, because the hospitality industry is going to need us more than ever once this pandemic is over. So that being said, thank you guys so much for watching our channel. I've really loved sharing my experience living in Switzerland with you, and I want to keep sharing it. So if you haven't already and you've made it this far, please consider joining the Traveling Swiss family and subscribing and liking. If you want to catch up with me between uploads, you can follow us at the Traveling Swiss on Instagram. I post there more than I post here, and I often survey my audience to co-create these videos with me. So make sure you're not missing out on the fun there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Hey guys, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
If you want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you soon.